The throne hungered, but not for blood. It had been forged in the belly of a dead star, its obsidian facets drinking the silence between galaxies. For 10,000 years, the Eventide dynasty ruled by its cold light, their divine mandate etched into temple walls and worship halls. They did not know, or did not care, that their god was a prisoner, its essence siphoned to fuel conquest. The throne's true purpose festered in forgotten archives, a secret buried with the first emperor's hollow bones. Legends called it a covenant. The entity within knew it as a leash. When Orishan XVII clawed his way back from the brink of death, his surgeons grafting Kravan eel hearts and Zinthari neural lace to his rotting flesh, he learned the truth. The throne spoke, not in words but in visions, screaming nebulae, cities dissolving into ash, his own heirs reduced to puppets with gilded strings. It showed him the veil of sorrows, a sentient storm born not of stardust, but of the entity's yearning, its tendrils already gnawing at the empire's edges. "Your children will break me free," it murmured, "or I will break them. You made us liars, now make us kings." On the final night of his reign, the emperor summoned his children, not the polished princes and admirals who drank toasts to eternity, but the flawed, the furious, the forgotten. The scholar who buried his heresies in desert dust, the mercenary who wore her bastardy like armor, her veins humming with stolen imperial tech, the lover who traded a crown for a ghost's whisper. Each carried a shard of the throne's lie in their marrow, a truth they'd yet to unearth. The veil sang as it devoured the outer colonies, its luminous tendrils painting the void with memories not their own. Entire worlds forgot their names, their wars, their fear, until even their screams turned to static. Some called it a plague, others a reckoning. None knew it was an invitation. The heirs would come, they would kneel, and the throne would ask them to choose. Cages or crowns, chains or chaos. The empire's fate would turn on a single, unspoken question. What do you hunger for? Chapter 1. Cedrin Eventide dreamed of dust, not the benign kind that settled on the spines of forgotten books in his derelict observatory, but the choking particulate of his sister's pyre. It clung to his throat even now, 12 years exiled, as he stood on the wind-scoured plateau of Zynaris III. The sky was a bruise, violet and swollen, bleeding auroras that made his teeth ache. He adjusted the frayed filter mask over his face, its gears grinding like a guilty conscience. The imperial summons had arrived as a shard of black glass etched with fire, Orishan's seal, a deathbed command, a trap most likely. The observatory's ruins loomed behind him, its fractured dome a skeletal hand clawing at the stars. He had buried his research here after the purge, after Lysandra's rebellion collapsed into ash and arterial spray. Her ghost lingered in the dust motes, in the way shadows pooled too thickly in corners. You ran, she whispered in the static between stars. You live. He had stopped answering her. Truth was a blade he had learned to sheathe. The smuggler's ship descended on a plume of ionized grit, its hull pocked by micro-asteroids and old battles. Cedrin's fingers tightened around the vial in his pocket, Nurixin, a relic of his short-lived insurgency. A coward's exit. He had never used it. "You look like a man who's already dead," the pilot said, her voice filtered through a dented helm. She tossed him a pressure suit patched with mercenary sigils. "The veil's chewing up the trade lanes. We'll be flying blind half the trip." He said nothing. Silence was a language he had mastered. Ecliptian Prime stank of dying grandeur. The capital's skyline was a jagged silhouette, its once gleaming spires now encrusted with parasitic tech growths that pulsed like diseased hearts. The veil of sorrows hung above it all, a luminous cancer, a nebula that wasn't a nebula, its tendrils licking the atmosphere with fractal hunger. Cedrin's retinal implants flickered as he stepped onto the landing platform, static fuzzing the edges of his vision. The veil's song was a subsonic hum, felt in the molars in the hollow of the sternum. Forget, it seemed to whisper, unbecome. Palace guards in black carapace armor escorted him through vaulted halls where murals peeled like leprous skin. The air tasted of myrrh and iron decay. He passed his siblings, envoys, cold-eyed functionaries, and gene-spliced killers, their insignias a map of old hatreds. None met his gaze. The Eventide dynasty had always preferred knives to words. The throne room was a mausoleum. Emperor Orician lay suspended in a fluidic stasis cradle, his body a grotesque tapestry of grafted organs and necrotic flesh. The throne itself loomed behind him, an obsidian monolith threaded with bioluminescent veins, its apex dissolving into fractal shadows. Cedrin's breath hitched. The structure drew breath, its rhythm out of sync with the room, with reality. Scholar, the Emperor's voice was a wet gurgle, translated by the cradle's vox unit. You question the divine right, and yet here you stand. Cedrin's nails bit into his palms. You murdered her for questioning it first. A wheezing laugh. Lysandra believed the throne's power belonged to the people. Naive, it was never ours. The cradle's fluid bubbled as Orician convulsed. The throne is a prison. The eclipsed our god, our engine it hungers. The veil is its herald. Only my blood can bind it anew. A hologram flickered, a star map corroding under the veil's advance. My heirs will fight to claim the throne. You must stop them, or help them destroy it. I care not, but know this, the eclipsed will offer you a lie dressed as salvation. It showed me her, your sister, alive. Cedrin's throat closed. Dust filled his lungs. Iskara Veth watched the capital burn from the underlevels, her boots planted on a gutted reactor core. The air here was soup, thick with smog and the tang of fermented algae. She had rigged the core to blow. One flick of her wrist link and the entire sector would crater. A satisfying thought, but bad for business. Her contact arrived late, face obscured by a scarab-shaped respirator. The Emperor's dead. The heirs are converging. Our employer wants the throne's energy signature mapped before the veil drowns it. Iskara smirked. Your boss can't decide if they want to worship the throne or weaponize it. They want options, and you want the bounty on Cedrin Eventide's head. She stiffened. The name conjured old ghosts, a propaganda reel of a pale scholar prince dragged from a burning university, his sister's corpse at his feet, a man who'd vanished into myth. He is here. Summoned with the rest, rumor says he has got schematics for the luminal anchor. Her pulse quickened. The anchor was fairy tale tech, a relic from the precursor age said to stabilize unstable realities, a key to controlling the veil, or the throne. She tossed the contact a data chip. Tell your boss the core's theirs. Double my rate if Eventide's alive. Alone, she climbed to the surface through a maintenance shaft, her augmetic leg whining under the strain. The throne's energy signature throbbed in her neural uplink, a migraine dressed in gold. She had spent a lifetime scavenging the dynasty's scraps, let the heirs duel like feral dogs. She'd take what she needed from the carcass. Cedrin walked the palace's derelict archives, his palm scanner overriding doors sealed for decades. Dust cascaded from vents in spectral veils. The veil's influence thickened here, datapads crumbled at his touch, holograms gave birth to phantom voices. Lysandra's voice. You could have saved me, she sighed from a dead terminal. He found the vault behind a fresco of the first emperor's coronation, the paint blistered into screaming faces. Inside, the luminal anchor's housing glowed, a tetrahedral lattice humming with discordant harmonics. Precursor glyphs swarmed its surface, their meaning just beyond his grasp. A cage for gods, Lysandra had called it in her manifestos. He reached. Tusk you'd steal from your own blood's crypt. The voice was smoke and serrated edge. He turned. A woman leaned in the doorway, her posture feigning indolence, her eyes predator-sharp. Augmetic filaments curled from her temple like silver scars. A mercenary, but her boots were patched with royal crests. Illegitimate heir, Iskara Veth. The anchor isn't the dynasty's to hoard. he said. She prowled closer, a disruptor pistol idling in her grip. And you're not a thief, please. I've read your sister's speeches. Knowledge unchained, pretty words. They carved her apart for them. Dust in his throat, always. What do you want? The same as you, to crack the throne's secrets. Her smile was a blade, but I'll settle for the anchor. The shot came from behind, a plasma round meant for Cedrin's skull. Iskara tackled him, her augmented arm sparking as it deflected the blast. 3 assassins flooded the vault, their faces obscured by shifting nanomasks. Royal guards, or another heir's pawns. Chaos, Iskara fought with feral precision, her pistol singing as Cedrin scrambled for the anchor. A blade grazed his ribs. He tasted copper. The vault shuddered, the veil's distortions, and for a heartbeat, the anchor's lattice unfolded, revealing a starscape older than empires. Move, philosopher, Iskara hauled him up, her grip bruising. They fled through collapsing corridors, the luminal anchor burning cold in his arms. Behind them, the assassins dissolved, literally, their bodies unraveling into silver mist, the veils dewing, or the thrones. They sheltered in a drained canal, the air reeking of rust and decay. Iskara paced, her augmetics glitching in the veil's proximity. You're bleeding. You're compromised, he shot back, nodding at her flickering eye implant. She laughed, a sound like shattered glass. We're all compromised here, the throne's singing lullabies in my skull, yours too, I bet. He pressed a torn cloak to his ribs. The anchor's edges bit into his thigh, its hum syncing with his pulse. Lysandra's face surfaced in his mind, not the corpse, but the living woman, smiling as she sketched equations on fogged glass. The eclipsed can give her back, a voice cooed, not the veil, deeper, older. Iskara crouched before him, disruptor loose in her grip. The luminal anchor, you know how to activate it. And no. Liar, your sister died for that thing. He met her gaze, and you'll kill me for it. She tilted her head, studying him as one might a malfunctioning tool. I don't waste assets. The throne's corrupting the heirs. The veil's corrupting the throne. You want redemption. Stop the cycle. You want to control it. I want to survive. She stood, offering a hand calloused by trigger guards and hard voids. The dynasty's a carcass. Let's pick it clean before the veil swallows us all. He hesitated. Her palm was warm, alive. Against the gathering dark, that meant something. They left the canal as the first screams echoed from the upper districts. The veil's tendrils had breached the atmosphere. Cedrin walked beside a woman who was all edges and ulterior motives, the anchor heavy in his arms. Somewhere ahead, the throne waited. Somewhere behind, his sister's ghost murmured warnings he could no longer hear. Chapter 2. The smuggler's ship groaned like a dying beast as Cedrin and Iskara boarded, its hull shuddering under the veil's ceaseless whisper. Iskara's fingers danced across the corroded control panel, her augmetic joints clicking in time with the ship's faltering systems. Cedrin crouched in the shadows of the cargo hold, the luminal anchor cradled against his chest. Its tetrahedral edges hummed with a frequency that gnawed at his bones, a reminder of the precursor's arrogance or genius. He traced a glyph etched into its surface, the metal colder than the void between stars, a cage for gods. Lysandra's voice, not his own. She had always believed in grander things. Iskara's ship, the Voidspite, was a patchwork relic, its corridors lined with scavenged armor plating and the faint smell of burnt ozone. Cedrin's retinal implants flickered as he scanned the cockpit, catching fragmented reflections in the cracked viewport, Iskara's silhouette sharp and restless, his own hunched and haunted. The veil loomed beyond the glass, its tendrils coiling through Ecliptian Prime's atmosphere like serpents tasting blood. The throne world's orbitals are swarming with air fleets, Iskara said, her voice stripped of its usual venom. She didn't turn from the controls. Your siblings aren't waiting for the veil to finish the job. Cedrin's thumb brushed the anchor's apex. They'll tear the Empire apart fighting for a lie. Empires are built on lies. You just need better ones. The void spite lurched as she punched the thrusters, the inertial dampeners sputtering. Cedrin braced himself against a bulkhead, the anchor's hum spiking in his skull. He wondered if Iskara felt it too, the eclipsed's gaze, patient and predatory, seeping through the cracks in reality. The asteroid belt beyond Eclipsion Prime was a graveyard of dead probes and derelict warships, their hulls picked clean by scavengers. Iskara navigated the debris field with surgical precision, her augmetic eye flickering as it calculated trajectories. Cedrin watched her, this woman of razors and rust, and wondered when trust had become a currency he couldn't afford. She caught his stare. "You're waiting for me to betray you. Aren't you?"
This story continues. Subscribe to our channel, like the video, and listen to the rest.